In this edition of our podcast, we are going to talk about a burning issue, which is the farming protest. Today we have with us Hellion, who is a subject matter expert on this topic. And together with him, we are going to dissect the farm bills and the protests around it. So, Hellion, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, everyone, and a special thanks to Aki for inviting me to this podcast. I hope it would be a learning experience for everyone. Actually, I come from an agricultural background, and currently I reside in Haryana, so I know a bit or two about how the system functions.
Let's start the podcast. So,
Okay.
we have a list of questions that we have compiled from our members. So, I'm gonna take those questions and let's begin. So, the first question that we have, and almost everyone has this doubt. So, what exactly are the farm bills that we have passed? Laddu has asked this question.
There are three bills. First one is the Farmers Produce, Trade and Commerce Ordinance. It seeks to provide an ecosystem to farmers and traders that is free from the government intervention. And it helps the farmers enjoy freedom of choice related to sale of their produce. It also has a provision of electronic transactions for trading, and it would help alleviate cess and levies that were to be paid by farmers and traders to the middlemen. This would increase selling options to the farmers, and it would promote trade and help in better pricing, and it would help realize a bigger goal of one India, one agri market. Then the second bill is the Farmers Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Services Bill. So this bill aims at creating a national level framework on farming agreements to engage with agribusiness firms, processors, wholesalers, exporters, etc. For sale of services and produce at mutually agreed price level playing field, and it would transfer the risk of market unpredictability to the buyers, and this would attract private sector investment to build supply chains, which the government lacks, and then it would help in elimination of intermediaries, and this will help in full price realization. Then the third one is Essential Commodities Amendment. It would remove commodities such as oil seeds, pulses, cereals, onion, potato, edible oil from list of essential commodities. So it would remove fear of private sector, of government intervention and price distortion. This would further help in harnessing economies of scale, and help development of cold storage, warehouse, and such an action would help increase supply chain efficiency. So it would also prevent wastage of perishables and improve price stability. Around 30% perishable produce is wasted due to lack of cold storage.
So, Helian, what was the need of these bills, especially at a time when we as a country and the entire world is going through this unprecedented COVID-19 crisis?
See, these reforms are just a tip of the iceberg when it comes to solving agrarian distress, and they will help shift focus of the policymakers from food security to raising farmers' income. As we have achieved food security and we are a food surplus nation. So decreasing landholding sizes and increasing input costs are reducing farmers' income, and the government simply lacks the resources for efficient investment. So a mixed model of public and private inputs is required. Now, these reforms address this exact problem and remove structural bottlenecks and systemic inefficiencies. Now, the reforms will help fill gaps between the fractured supply chains, and allow, again, as mentioned earlier, they will allow harnessing economy of scale, and improved mechanization and judicial input of seeds and fertilizers.
We have another question from Laddu, and that is how this system of MSP and procurement works across the country.
So, every year CACP is a committee that decides what would be the MSP based on input costs and interest on land that would be incurred by farmer. The central government extends price support to farmers through FCI and state agencies. It is an open-ended procurement, which means whatever comes in will be bought. The farmer simply has to take his produce to the mandi and the government would procure it. This process is basically done in Punjab and Haryana. Operations are undertaken at mandis and in consultation with state governments. So there are basically two types of procurements. One is the centralized and the other is non-centralized. Centralized procurement is done by FCI directly, or it also sometimes it's also done by state government agencies. Then the all the produce that is procured is handed over to FCI, and all the logistics cost is reimbursed to the state. Okay. And the second thing is non-centralized procurement. Here it is entirely done by the state agencies. They distribute according to their PDS requirements, and the surplus that is left is again handed over to FCI, and again the state agencies are reimbursed for the logistics cost, and all this procurement is then sent to the central pool, which then allocates it to various states according to the PDS needs.
So, Hellion, as we see, you have mentioned quite a number of advantages and need for these bills. Then, what is the controversy around it? Like, do you think there will be a monopoly of the private players, as the farmers are saying?
Basically, we all know what the controversies and doubts of the farmers are. But in general, these controversies are majorly due to fear psychosis created by opposition party or the people whose vested interests lie in staying in the previous system. Okay, it partly is also the inability of the government to convey the benefits to the farmers. And about the private players, no, I don't think that should happen. See, there won't be a monopoly of private players because even now, more than 90% of the farmers' produce is procured by private entities. And there are some areas that need reform. But there have been no instances of monopoly and price control in other sectors as well. For example, dairy, fisheries, horticulture, floriculture. In dairy, you can see three competing with each other. One is Amul, that is a cooperative model. The second is Hudson, that is a private model, a local private model, South Indian.
My next question is,
Mhm.
what do you think will be the impact on the prices of crops after these acts?
Yeah, it won't be as if prices of everything will come down, but yes, there would be some changes, and that would depend on how the market functions after these reforms.
Sorry for the interruption. 5 second break. Three, two, one, back.
In total, if you see in general, these are long-term solutions, and it would take time for these to take effect. And the effect wouldn't be uniform as well. This is because different states have different systems, and these reforms will affect them accordingly. For example, if in Punjab would be affected the most because it has a very strong mandi system. But Bihar won't be affected as much because APMC is already abolished there. So the different states would have different effects, and that we have to see.
All right. Praveen has this question. Many people are saying that these bills will destroy APMC. But what significant changes do APMC have brought in the lives of farmers? And how exactly is that going to change?
APMC won't be destroyed. The current procurement system would continue. It is just that the farmers would get another option to sell their produce. These bills will just allow competition to mandis by allowing the farmers to sell to private buyers and set up private mandis. And the APMCs, the control of APMC would physical limitations of APMCs. So again, this too has same logic. Again, different states have different systems, so it would affect them accordingly. These bills will help transform the multi system, which is monopolistic right now. That means too many sellers and a single buyer. And as farmers would have options to sell their produce anywhere, so it would help reduce the monopoly of the mandis.
All right. The next question is from Lucky Vinay. He asks that farmers in Bihar don't get MSP and they come to Punjab and Haryana to sell their produce. Now, what's your take on that?
Yes, farmers from Bihar and UP do come to Punjab and they sell through local traders in the name of Punjab farmers, which is actually illegal. So basically, with passage of these bills, it would be made legal for farmers to send to sell elsewhere. So again, there are instances where police raids the vehicles coming into Punjab and they seize the trucks that carry grains. So this would be made legal after the passage of these bills.
Alright. So we see that MSP is somewhere in the center of the discussion. So what is the problem with adding MSP to the law? Laddu has asked this question.
See, adding MSP into the law is actually impractical because earlier as well, MSP has never been included in the law. It has always been an administrative exercise where the CSEP gives suggestions regarding the prices every year, and it is a dynamic thing that cannot be mandated by law. Okay, MSP basically is a notional indicative price which will obviously go down once the market forces take over because the sheer surplus that we are growing. Okay, so but again, still the government has already said, in my personal opinion, MSP shouldn't exist at all. But government has already said that MSP procurement will continue at the APMCs, and because they still would have to provide grains at subsidized rate to the poor. This has been mandated by the Food Security Act of 2013. So current MSP system would also continue, and APMCs would still function.
So, Hellion, another issue along with the MSP has been the grievance redressal mechanism as suggested in the bill. Do you think that restricting the justice to the level of SDM is going to favor the farmers?
See, the issue, it has been a quite a widely discussed issue about SDM. See, for this we have to actually read the act where it is mentioned about the grievance redressal mechanism. So I'll elaborate on that. It says that an agreement should provide for a conciliation board as well as defined process for dispute resolution. Okay, and the board shall constitute a representation from all parties that are concerned with the agreement. Okay, and if the dispute remains unresolved for 30 days of mediation in the board, then parties can approach SDM for resolution. Now, if the parties are still not satisfied, they still have an option of approaching an appellate authority that would be decided by the collector or additional collector. Okay, now both STM and the collector would have to dispose the matter in 30 days, and they can impose penalties on parties that violate the agreement. And again, no action can be taken against the agricultural land to recover the dues. So this clears the doubt about farmers saying that land chala jayega and all that. And there have been such mechanisms existent for dispute resolution earlier as well. Agriculture is just an addition to it, and these provisions are in line with SC's recommendation of promoting mediation for disputes. This would lessen their workload as well and prevent the parties from legal exploitation that includes legal cost, delay in settlements, etc. So, in theory, yes, they are beneficial for the farmers as multiple checks and balances are present to prevent corruption, but only time will tell how these are implemented.
All right. So, Hellion, we have another question from one of our members. He asked, politicians have talked about, waiving of loans for farmers in their election manifestos. It has been a political rhetoric. Now, do you think that is sustainable in the long term?
See, absolutely not. Farm loan waivers are disastrous for the economy. It is fine if they are a one-time settlement, but it sets a bad precedence, and more and more states would start demanding the same. Which and this makes it a political tool for appeasement politics. Okay, uh, farm loan waivers are a long and separate debate for some other time. But the short answer is that they are detrimental to the banking system and the credit culture, and they also promote a practice of freeloading.
All right. So let's get back to the protest. Many people are saying that this is a middleman-led protest. These are not farmers. Do you agree to that statement?
Yes, middlemen are one of the stakeholders that are set to lose due to these bills. The mandi tax and the middleman commission would be reduced. So yes, they will protest. Obviously, they will protest. They have the right to protest. And in Punjab, APMC system is quite strong. So yes, the farmers getting the option of selling elsewhere. Uh, Commission would go out, and when farmers get into contract with private players, they might lose revenue generated by giving informal loans to farmers.
Alright. Tough Cake asks, why is there so much of public sentiment and emotional attachment to farmers and farming in India?
Yeah, see, this is due to India being a food deficient nation in the 60s and 70s, and the subsequent green revolution that helped India pull out from these shortages. But now we are a food surplus nation, so we need fewer people in agriculture. There are too many people that are indulged in agriculture, which makes agriculture poor. So, particularly, cereal production is one such area which needs immediate intervention. And diversification is a necessity right now.
You talked about diversification. Do you think that Indian farmers are not ready to adapt to newer technologies, newer market systems?
See, it is the status quo approach that is coupled with assured procurement at MSPs that incentivizes farmers from Punjab and Haryana as well to stay in this wheat paddy cycle. In case of farmers from all over India, the problem is small landholding size that reduces the returns on investment and eventually further investment on tech. They simply just don't have money to invest. So within input costs are increasing, and this cycle keeps on repeating. And the poor farmers are caught in the trap of perpetual poverty.
All right, Helium.
Mhm.
So the next question we have is from Dhruv, and he says that if farmers start selling their produce to private entities, then how is the government going to provide food in the public distribution system? Are they going to procure food from private players at slightly higher cost?
No, no. See, government will, as mentioned many times by the government, that they will continue to procure grains at MSP because they have to feed the poor, which is about 60% of the population comes under this category. So FCI godowns are overflowing at about three times their capacity, and they have losses of 3 lakh crore due to this. So farmers diversifying to other crops won't make such a difference, and no, government would continue to procure from APMCs only at MSP as well.
All right. Now, let's move on to the other aspect of this protest. Now, many people are saying that there are external players at play here. So, Utkarsh asked this question: is this protest based on fake narratives? As people are suggesting that this is running behind some ISI propaganda.
See, that actual information would be with the intelligence agencies, but there could be involvement of some Khalistani ISI elements, and funds could have been provided. We have been seeing protests in Toronto where Khalistani flags were being raised. So, but I think these protests majorly constitute the farmers, middlemen, and politicians only. So, I don't think it is a big propaganda and everyone is linked to Khalistan. But there are some genuine concerns and there are some misinformation that needs to be cleared.
All right. So, Helian, Venki asked this question: is there any strict law that will hinder anyone or will not allow anyone to protest on roads and railway tracks? Seeing the current scenario, it's a need definitely. What are your views on that?
Oh yes, there is a law. See, Supreme Court bench led by Justice Sanjay Kishan Kaul in its judgment on Shaheen Bagh case upheld the right to peaceful protest, but he made it absolutely clear that protests have to take place at designated spots and protesters cannot block occupy public spaces. So, and the government does not resort to harsh measures because of political backlash it might face after such a decision. So, the situation might go out of hand due to the presence of Khalistani elements present in the protests. So, that is a concern of the government as well. Let's see how it progresses.
Yeah, let's see how it progresses. And on that, one question that is on everyone's mind is that what would be the next step of the government? to in order to convince the farmers?
See, these reforms have been discussed since the last 17, 18 years. And various committees, Dalwai committee report, then there is Shanta Kumar panel, and Swaminathan Commission, then there was a standing committee. They all have recommended these reforms. Well, these are not all the reforms, but yes, these are some of them. And these reforms are in toto are beneficial for the farmers. Okay, so now it is up to the government as to how they communicate the benefits of the reforms to the farmers. uh, a consensus needs to be built, and doubts of the farmers from Punjab should be resolved, as they might have been misguided. The 85% farmers, small and medium in Punjab, 15% are the ones who are big, who have large land holdings. So they have vested interest in the current system. So they will try their best to not shift to another system. And on an administrative level, there are many uh, areas where government can focus. Some of them are to increase the use of ENAM. ENAM is a national agricultural market, okay, where farmers can sell and buy and traders can buy anywhere in India. Okay, so setting up more FPOs, that is farmer producer organizations, and Grameen agricultural markets. This would cover a large population of small and medium farmers and improve their bargaining power. So these are some of the areas where the government needs to focus. And again, let's see how it progresses.
All right. So, Helian, we had wonderful insights into the this entire fiasco. We thanks to you, we had the chance to know more about the bills, the protests, the different stakeholders, what are their opinions on it, and definitely I believe that agriculture, being the backbone of the country, has been so since the independence, and with something as big as this in agriculture, it's quite significant for people to have insights into it. And thanks to you, today we and our viewers are gonna have wonderful insights into this. So again, thank you, Hellion, so much for this podcast.
Oh, thank you, Utkarsh, for having me. I hope I was able to clear some doubts that surround the bills. And thank you for everyone for listening.
All right, so guys, this will be the end of our podcast. We hope you had a wonderful session.